it just helps me more remember who I am and why God made me a woman and put me on this earth. You know, that I do have a role as a woman, and that veil helps remind me of that. And so it was never really taken out of our church. It just, through misinformation, left the church. And I mean, I guess at this point, obviously we don't have to, or the Pope would have said something, but it was still something that was, I felt, kind of taken out of the church in the wrong way. And so I realized it was still a part of our tradition, you know, even if we weren't doing it. And so after reading that and reading in the Bible in 1 Corinthians where it talks about women covering their heads, I kind of started to really feel drawn to that, I guess, form of prayer, that was a way to enhance my spirituality and enhance my image of myself in relation to God.
I grew up on a farm in Alabama, and all of the women always wrapped their heads, so it was like the thing to do, a woman cover her head. I never knew exactly why, except it seemed like the proper thing to do. I started studying more of the Old Testament in the Bible and the women that were in the Bible, and how the godly women seemed to carry themselves, and so it kind of inspired me a little bit more to keep my head covered.
Well, I started covering when I was 11, when I got my period, just because I thought it was just a normal expectation. I didn't really realize the reasons behind wearing the covering, and I just knew that being Muslim, you do cover, so I kind of did it, you know, in a mechanical sense. So when I was 16, I realized that I had my own beauty within myself. I had a sense of my own sensuality, my own, the fact that I don't need to prove to other people that I am beautiful. And so I wore it as a redefinition of the fact that women are much more sensual and beautiful if you add the inner dimension to the whole mix.
The Sikh religion asks you to cover your head before the Guru, which is the scriptures that are coming from holy saints in India, Sufi saints, Muslim saints, Hindu saints. The yogis say when you're through your karma, then you understand what your dharma is, what your gift is, how you should live your life. And once you've gotten that, done that, completed that, and have this like consciousness, then when you leave your body and go into the etheric realm, you know, the other world, then you're liberated. So you can either do that consciously or unconsciously. And as a Sikh and as a yogi, you strive to do it consciously. And one of the ways you do that is when you wrap your head, you are consciously saying, I am giving my head to the Guru, to the light. I'm moving from the darkness, from my ignorance into my light, from my unconsciousness into my consciousness, and I am putting forth my gift, my happiness.
I come from, as I said, a Catholic family, and they too are very traditional Catholics. But like I said, it just kind of so fallen out of the church that even though they were traditional, it wasn't something they did. And I think my father thought it was a little bit odd, but not too much because he's really into the Bible. So once I kind of, you know, was talking with him about how it fit into the Bible, it made sense to him. And my mother really liked the idea. She's really a traditional Catholic, and a lot of things about Vatican II kind of bothered her, and she missed the head covering thing. So I think that really, she really liked that. Although she doesn't do it herself, I think more because the church they go to, it isn't a part of either, and she feels maybe a little self-conscious. But you know, she was real open to that. And my husband was not Catholic when I met him, and so he kind of always more takes my lead when it comes to the religious things. Like if I had something, I told him all about how this was a part of our history, and so he thought that was a really great thing and has no problem with it either. So it's something that they're all comfortable with, I guess.
Except for me, it came through reading in the Bible, my upbringing. I was brought up with women covering their head. If you look at most elder women now, they still cover their head with something. Cap, shirt, head. They wrap in their head. So I'm not really sure why. The older people never explained to me why they were doing what the principle of it. It's just that I saw, I adapted, I learned, I did. And then, as I was said before, later on, it just became part of who I was because of the Rastafarian, way of life. And most of the Rastafarian sisters I met, they had their hair wrapped in these beautiful gay ladies. I mean, and they would just be, wow. And then I met the African sisters, and their head wraps. And I never really asked why they wrapped their heads, except I knew that I liked it because it was beautiful for me. Then it was all part of who they were too. So there I was, again, wrapping my head back and thinking about, oh, this is how we was in Alabama. This is how we was, this is how the lady was.
My dad actually grew up with a covering, and he grew up to not like it. My mom didn't grow up with covering. She never covered a day in her life till she was like in her 40s or 30s, and she is okay with my covering. But my family would prefer if I didn't cover. But they actually are wonderful in the fact that they allow me to, they express their opinion where they don't like it, but then they'll say, it's up to you, and you know what goes on. And they've seen, firsthand how people have treated me.
That my family, I guess when I lived in New York, it wasn't that big of an issue because they were far away from me, and I would just come home for the holidays, and, oh, there's she again, just doing some kooky thing.
Just because my head's covered, I'm not somehow showing I'm weaker than the men, which a lot of, feminists try and claim is why they didn't like it. So I think there's that aspect. It's also helped me, I feel, because I think in today's society, so many things, especially with women, are so kind of sexual. We have, since the 60s when the mantillas were kind of gotten rid of, the whole sexual revolution's taken place. And I think the idea of a woman to be modest, and it helps remind me of that, especially going into church. Of all places, I should be modest. And so when I dress differently, it helps me remind myself of that and remind myself that I'm going somewhere different now, and, to kind of prepare myself that way by changing my clothes and getting into that modesty.
And the positive thing was the reaction of brothers that were consciousness. They were very conscious people, and they was conscious enough to know that they would say, my queen. And gave me all the respect in the world, opened doors, helped me with my children if Oprah Femi wasn't around, just a whole respectful thing to say the queen is here, So that was the most positive things about wrapping my head, the respect I got from both European Americans and African American males, just men, period. So they always look at you from a different point of view, so.
And my husband tells me, it's up to you what you do, because he met me after I was covering. He actually never saw my face till 3 weeks before we got married. So, and that also made me realize that my husband loved me before he saw me, like he loved what I really was before he saw my physical and sensual side.
I feel very beautiful. I feel very divine. I feel very uplifted. I feel very honored. I feel very committed to my purpose, to my reason for living, and also I feel very protected. When you wear a turban in New York, and when I began to wear a turban and all white, and friends will tell you, I wore all white for nearly 10 years in New York and never got catcalls again from construction workers, never got it got doors open for me. The whole vibration of your being changes when got salam alaikum, sister, thank you, sister.
When I first started it, I was a part of a very traditional conservative environment, so it wasn't really that uncomfortable for me. I felt a little odd maybe because all my friends had seen me before without it, and now all of a sudden I was starting it, so it might have been like a little bit, well, what, she all of a sudden going kind of crazy on us or something. But, I got over that quick. And they didn't really say much. Once they kind of would ask about it, but I would just share with them why I was doing it, and they all thought that was kind of interesting and neat.
A woman's beauty is something to be revered and to be appreciated. But if we show it all the time, it just becomes normal and bland and nobody cares about it, you know. So, I mean, I just think, you know, women's, both their physical self and their spiritual and emotional self should not be denied. Both should be affirmed and realized within yourself. Many women go their whole lives so, you know, beautiful and so much to offer the world, but they never realize it till their time has passed. So. But I think one of my main motivations is if more women start covering, then it's not seen as something freakish. It's seen as, you know, a cult, something that has to do with ideals, not just with culture. So I'm trying to break that mold. I'm trying to be one of the, you know, kind of the pioneers of believing that, you know, trying to show people and educate people of why women really do cover and how liberating it really is.